From Evoke Media, I'm Sabrina Mirage Naeem. With me is Cassia Binkowski, and this is Breaking Glass, a series of conversations with women around the world who are shattering glass ceilings and challenging social norms. They are audacious, gutsy, and their stories are echoed across borders and generations in a rallying cry that is changing the narrative for women everywhere. We're talking today with Angela Nazarian, an author and entrepreneur who's dedicated her career to empowering women. And I just love this idea of women empowering women. I think it's so limitless. Angela's career has taken her from academia to writing 4 books predominantly about visionary women, to founding her nonprofit, also named Visionary Women, which brings together extraordinary women for powerful conversations.
We're speaking with Angela about the power of women supporting other women, how transformational that can be, and how creating very intentional communities of women can actually be the key to shattering glass ceilings in so many industries. But we're also talking about creating space at the table for men and how important that is in conversations around gender equity, regardless of the industry.
So true. And the difference between men as allies and men as advocates, we need both, right? We're also talking about the toxic culture of competition and women cutting one another down, which has been prevalent for so long. Angela's take on how we can change that is really inspiring. She's a living example of the power of lifting women up. Take a listen. Good morning, Angela. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to be chatting with you about women empowering other women, which has been such a cornerstone of your life and your career for so many years. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, I'm very excited to be here.
So, we want to talk about your very impressive career in women's leadership, your nonprofit, Visionary Women, which brings together some of the most dynamic thought leaders in the country. And you've now written 4 books, which all highlight extraordinary women in some way. But before we dive into any of that, we want to kind of rewind back to your childhood in Iran. What was it like for a young girl before the 1979 revolution?
Well, it's interesting because I'm the last and fifth child in the family, and I have 3 older brothers and an older sister. I happened to go to a bilingual school in Iran, so I was learning English alongside, Persian literature and everything at the same time. And I also went to a school where it was very diverse. We had Muslim, Zoroastrian, Christian students. So, the experience I had as a little girl going to a school like that, my master was an English lady, a British lady. So it's very different than, per se, what my oldest brother, who's 18 years older, had, or when my father was growing up in the northern part of Iran, basically in a Jewish ghetto, and a lot of anti-Semitic sentiments in his village. So for me, I felt like I was in a cocoon where I was going to a school, and since the value of education was highly, highly regarded in my own personal family, I just, I was always very intent on being a very good student.
I want to touch on that for a minute because we've heard from other women who have come from Iran that education for some of their families were much more kind of touted for the boys or the men of the family and not as highly regarded or as prioritized for the young girls. And I'm curious if that was different in your family.
I think in some ways it was different, and in some ways, no. They did feel that being intelligent and studious or good at school was important for girls. But being honest, I don't think that my father nor my mom would have thought that if it was going to be at the expense of my personal life or at my, getting married later, I think they would have been very anxious. They would have been. I mean, I have to be honest, but I also have to give them full credit. So when they came from Iran to the United States, I was 16 and a half. I was raised by my siblings who were much more, younger with different ideologies. And they tried as hard as they could to get with the program. I wanted to go to my graduate studies and everything. And of course, it was completely um, attractive to David. David wanted someone like that. But my parents actually took him aside at our wedding night, saying, "We have one favor to ask you." And I was thinking, what are they going to, ask him? And my father and mom said, just please make sure that you support her studies. Well, then I say that was the biggest gift, although he didn't need any kind of reminder in that way. I felt that at that moment, they understood who I wanted to be, and they were supportive of that.
When did that shift happen then? I mean, you said early on that they could have never foreseen, sending their daughter away. And obviously you moved for circumstances other than your education. But when do you think that shift towards really prioritizing that for you, for their fifth daughter or their fifth child? When did that shift take place?
To tell you the truth, I'm not really sure. It's interesting because I come from a very traditional culture. And at the time, I was like 18 or 19, and all these guys wanted to like date. And I would say, "Are you kidding me? I'm studying. I have no time for this. I don't want to get married." And my parents would say, "Are you for real? Why don't you just, want to go out with people?" I really don't know when that happened. I think what I can tell you, and I've actually done workshops on transitions, and I think everybody goes through some sort of transition every 7 years in their life. Sometimes it's instigated by outside circumstances, and sometimes it's instigated by something that happens internally because you are trying to become a whole person and you're evolving. And I think it was a push and pull for me and my parents. I think they came here, they had no idea who I was as an adult. But certainly I think within those few years, those 4 years, something internally was happening for them. Maybe they weren't verbalizing it, but as I was changing, they were changing along with me. And it manifested itself in that moment.
So let's just paint a picture because your early years were in, as you say, a more traditional culture, a more traditional society, a very patriarchal society. You left Iran, your parents had to stay behind for some of your most formative years. You were with your siblings. And, we're just fascinated to understand how, coming from that background, you went on to have a career in women's leadership. Paint a picture for us about of what was it like for the women around you, and who were the women that maybe, were mentors or guides, or who maybe not women, maybe anyone else. Who were the people that kind of helped you along the way to get to where you became?
I felt that oftentimes I didn't have a role model in that way. I had great role models in my family for being a good person, being someone with integrity, having compassion. But things that were outside of the home or related to work, I didn't have one.